Our friends at Stravacraft Coffee are upping their offer to 25% off your first order of their delicious CBD infused coffee. It's Strava Craft Coffee. Check them out. And when you get over there, make sure to use the code DNVR25 to check them out and get 25% off your first order. What's amazing about Stravacraft Coffee, honestly, is their reviews. Go check out their reviews and see all of the different ways that this coffee and the CBD that it's infused with have helped people with different aches and ailments. And again, make sure to use the code DNVR25 to get 25% off your first order. And then you can subscribe and get 20% off every single time when they send it straight to your door. So make sure you check out Strava Craft Coffee today.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zach, Mace, RK at the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. None supposed to wait for, well, bring on the chase. Out on the field at Mile High, Broncos win is our desire. Coupled with Breck, Brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
We are DNVR, and we are presented by MSU Denver Online. Make sure you check them out, msudenver.edu/online, to see all they have to offer. They've got 750 total classes over there. There's something for everyone to further their education. Like I always say, MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other Colorado institution. So if you're looking to keep that job, looking to further that education, looking to get a better job on the other side of it, MSU Denver is the place for you. It's msudenver.edu/online.
My boys, what's shaking? Happy hump day, fellas.
Happy hump day to you, Zach.
And Tickle Pickle chiming in. Hey, Zach, what's up? What's up with you, Tickle Pickle? Comment section. Love that it's blowing up right now, guys. I have good vibes, even though it's, coming on the news of some really unfortunate news with Juwan James.
I think you'd have good vibes, Zach, for almost anything. I think the news would be if you didn't have good vibes when you came on here in the morning. It's remarkable how you're always positive. I think I wish I could get there, but alas, I'm old and middle-aged and surly, so that's not happening.
Zach's in such a great mood because he's been up for like 6 hours, already went for a hike, full-scale workout. This might as well be like noon for him.
Yeah, seriously, about to have my afternoon nap after this, guys.
Maybe he's already gone shopping and bought the Aaron Rodgers Jeopardy bobblehead that's now on sale.
Oh, I think that would be you who would have bought that.
I'm going for more of the Aaron Rodgers and the Denver Broncos jersey, repping that 12. That's my style.
Absolutely. All right. Well,
Paxton Lynch bobblehead still available then?
Oof. Did you ever get your hands on one of those?
No.
With how bad they are in terms of the likeness on bobbleheads, you could probably get a Paxton Lynch bobblehead and people wouldn't know the difference.
It's true.
Right?
And one would be much cheaper.
White guy, facial hair. Yeah, that's Aaron Rodgers.
Tall.
Yeah, exactly. Paxton's tall. That's for sure. All right. Like you said, Zach, some really unfortunate news comes down yesterday. As it relates to Juwan James training off facility grounds, which is a very important wrinkle in this story. He tears his Achilles. Original reporting is that it was going to be season ending. Then there was like some follow-up stuff that said maybe it's not going to be season ending, which I think is legal posturing.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see how that works out. But it's a bummer. And I didn't know how to phrase this on Twitter. Sometimes you get yourself in trouble trying to fit something into 280 characters that doesn't belong there. But It felt so weird talking about Juwan James as the Broncos starting right tackle. Like, we had to do it. That's the way that they had it projected. But at no point did I ever feel confident in talking about that. And it's really unfortunate that it ended up happening this way. I can't imagine that injury. It's a terrible injury to go through. But it just, at the entire time, felt like something was going to happen. So while this is a bummer for the Broncos and absolutely for Juwan James, and first and foremost, I hope he has a speedy recovery. It never felt like we were going to have Juwan James at right tackle.
Yeah, Ryan, it felt like that it was silly to count on him for 16 games. Maybe it wasn't silly to count on him for week 1, but it was silly to count on him for 16 games because coming into Denver before 2019, he did have the track record of every other year he played pretty much a full season. That got derailed the past 2 years. I think it was silly for the Broncos to count on that, and that's just why, last week, the Broncos not drafting a tackle was kind of baffling. And I did like George Paton coming out and saying, well, they tried to, but their guy was taken, a couple of picks before him on multiple occasions. So at least they tried. But Ryan, you're absolutely right. It did seem kind of silly counting on him for an entire season at right tackle.
Well, you can count on him for, say, 13 or 14 games, and that's fine. I don't think anybody expected him to get through all 16 just because of his track record. But like you mentioned, this guy's been every other year. The problem is, I guess, if you're going by the pattern on that, then even numbered years, he plays 15 or 16 games and plays very well. Odd numbered years, there's always some injury that costs him at least half the season. Maybe he made a mistake opting out because of COVID, because he burned off one of the years when he would have actually been expected to do something and might have done very well. I mean, it's a strange and unfortunate trend for him. But if you count now, if you count last year with COVID, I mean, you're looking at a scenario where at the end of this season, he has literally missed more games than he would have played in over the course of his career, and that's just, I mean, that's untenable. I mean, it's unfortunate for him, but you know what? Also, he was working out off site. I mean, and we all know what that means. The Broncos, I'm not saying they were happy for the injury, but you know what? There's the accounting. It surely was happening quickly as far as what this would mean and allowing them to get out from under this deal as quickly and quietly as possible and with a discount.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if you look at this now, just COVID, in terms of it causing Juwan James to opt out last season, and then it causing this kind of dispute with the Players Association not wanting to do OTAs this year, that has ended up costing Juwan James at least $20 million.
Wow. That is brutal for Juwan. And also part of this, Mace, I want to get into the number on what Broncos could save here. But one thing is that why I feel so bad about this is anytime a player gets injured, you feel really bad. But also he was back in the Broncos building earlier this offseason, working out with the team in the facility, and all reports were good. And then the union, this is a big black eye for the union because, of course, the union really discourages players from working out there in the offseason now in order to kind of get the shortened offseason program for every NFL team moving forward. And so Juwan goes off site and gets hurt. But when you get hurt off site, the NFLPA bargained this with the NFL. When you get hurt off site, then the team is no longer responsible and they can move on from you and save a lot of money. So, Mace, how does it break down for the Broncos?
Well, if the Broncos wanted to play hardball, they actually could, if they let him go, they could try to recover a prorated portion of the signing bonus. At that point, it would end up in the purview of an arbitrator. And it's possible that they may just say, okay, that signing bonus, it's $9 million, the prorated portion of the signing bonus that's left, that they may just kind of let that go, at which point you'd have a $12 million signing bonus in total because $3 million has already been accounted for back in 2019. And then, of course, the $5 million base salary. The big issue is the salary for this year. Now, This year's salary is guaranteed, but it's salary, and does that guarantee void because you had the injury off site? Now, like you mentioned earlier, it's being put out there that he could return this year, and I went back through the Demaryius Thomas timeline, and there is a justification for saying that a player could be back from an Achilles rupture within 7 months, because 10 years ago, Demaryius Thomas ruptured his Achilles working out off-site, by the way. It was in February in Atlanta in February 2011, ruptured his Achilles then, and by September, 7 months later, was ready to go for the start of the season, but he injured his pinky finger, and that ended that. So that's the sort of thing where if the Broncos just wanted to simply cut him and say, okay, you got injured, we're not going to pay you, that sort of thing may come up in terms of the back and forth saying, well, we've seen players that came back from this injury in 7 months, and in that case, that would mean he's available for December into January of the regular season. So that's the kind of thing that may end up argued if they're going back and forth. That's why I think really this is going to end with some kind of settlement between the parties, because the other thing that comes into play, guys, is that, as we learned yesterday, there's a $5 million injury guarantee for what's left on his deal. So the question is, if the Broncos do say we're going to work on a settlement, does Juwan James fight for every last dollar of that injury guarantee, or is it cut into because he was off site? There's a lot of kind of legalese and back and forth at play, and Rick Hurtado, the Broncos cap guy and financial guy, is probably going to be very busy with this for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and Ethan in the comments here says, there a moral issue with not paying Juwan James? Man, this is such an interesting question because I think in most cases you see the team take care of the player here. But there's long been an awkward tension between Juwan James and the Broncos in this relationship. It's never been a good relationship between these two sides. And I think that plays a big role here in the sense of he came in, he got hurt. The Broncos didn't necessarily believe that he couldn't go. Vic Fangio made a comment that has changed the entire course of the Juwan James relationship here in Denver by saying, well, we think he's physically ready to go, but we don't know if he's mentally ready to go. And that has been, that sent this thing off the rails long time ago. So all of that. Then you have Garrett Bolles talking about how he has to earn the trust of his teammates back. That changed the narrative here a bit. So I just think the Broncos almost feel like they kind of got ripped off, and this is like a back channel for them to get out of this. I think it's going to probably get pretty ugly.
Yeah, and that if the Broncos are going to take care of him in some way, it would be in the form of some sort of settlement. I agree with Mace that they'll probably come to a settlement, and maybe the Broncos throw an extra $1 million or $2 million in, but I do see where RK's coming from, and I can't disagree with that. They may not want to give him any extra money that he hasn't had. So what will this end up be if the Broncos do move on from him? Because I don't think that it makes sense to hold on to Juwan James, pay him his salary this season for the chance of him playing in January for the Broncos. I don't think that makes sense. The Broncos are going to go in a different direction, a significantly different direction, and they won't need him back here. So what will it end up costing them over these 3 years? Because obviously last year they only had to pay him $150,000 stipend, they didn't actually have to pay him that money.
Yeah, so the $150K stipend, I believe that would come out of the $10 million that he would have had this year. So basically his cap number would be his salary would be $9.85 million for this year. Now, if they cut, there's an interesting thing, of course, because when you're talking about the cap economics, if the Broncos had cut him just say last month, his cap number, which is $9.85 million plus the $150K last year, $10 million. If they had cut him just last month, said, okay, we're done, his cap number for this year would have gone from $13 million to $19 million, because you'd have the accelerated portion of the signing bonus, $9 million all hitting on top of that $10 million base salary. So if they can get out of it with a settlement and it's after June 1, they could structure, let's say they get out of every penny of that guaranteed and all they're giving him is what's left of the signing bonus. Then they could cut him after June 1 and take that $9 million left of the signing bonus, and they could actually spread over a couple of years if something is worked out after June 1. So it could be $4.5 million dead money this year, $4.5 million of dead money next year. That's an option. Or if there's some kind of settlement where he gets a portion of that $10 million guaranteed salary, whether it's the guarantee for injury of $5 million or something less than that, you would add that then to presumably the $9 million left of the prorated portion of the signing bonus. So maybe you're looking at, say, 12, 13 million perhaps that you're spreading over 2 years. So you're not having that huge hit that you would have otherwise had. So this could give the Broncos some flexibility. It's not going to be ideal because they're still going to be left with some dead money, but they could get some flexibility to spread out the hit and put some of it on next year when the cap space does go up. And then, of course, there's the long-term money they save by not paying him what he was owed beyond that.
Yeah.
You have Patrick Mahomes chiming in saying, "Oh, they're not going to pay him, for doing his job." Then you also have Mitchell Schwartz and a lot of Chiefs chiming in. I realize he's not Chief anymore, but saying like, "This is what we get for leaving the facilities." Like, I'm really glad he got that extra freedom. Now he misses out on $10 million, and I think he has a point. And the Broncos, might say, "Well, you want that money? Go to your Players Association. They're the ones who told you to work out off campus." I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in the way that Broncos Country has handled themselves through this situation. I just think it's really weird. And I think Vic Fangio carries some blame in this, and I think that he was a rookie head coach when he said that. He might have learned now that, man, you say something like that, people do not forget that you said it. But I don't know. There's just like a lot of like nastiness being spewed. Like someone in the comments, not to throw him under the bus, but said like 3 games in 3 years, he did this to himself. And it's like, well, no, he was hurt. Maybe he could have played 1 or 2 more games that year. Who knows? Obviously, that's what Vic Fangio insinuated. But the opt out, a lot of players did that. I don't know. It makes me long for a day when fans didn't know exactly how much money everyone was making, because as soon as everyone knows how much money a guy's making, it's like, all right, well, he better do this, that, or the other thing. And I don't know. I just wish it's not their money. It's not it's not your money. I just wish people would be a little less angry about this situation.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, because Juwan James was working out and he was trying to follow what his union told him to do. There was nothing egregious that he did, and he's just had the really bad injury bug with the team, and then obviously opted out. I know that rubbed some fans wrong, which I don't think that should rub fans wrong. But guys, now the Broncos, with or without Juwan James, regardless of if they settle, if they keep him on the team, if they just straight up move on from him, they have to move on as well, because they've got to protect whatever quarterback is behind there now. And there are a lot of options. So while the Broncos, while you wish they would have gone tackles, especially now in the draft at some point last week, or you wish that if this Juwan James injury was going to happen, it happened a week before the draft, so the Broncos knew about it. The Broncos are actually in a pretty good spot. I was shocked at how many options, good options, there are for the Broncos internally on their team to replace Juwan, and then also externally. I was shocked to see, what are we, May 5th right now? Well, happy Cinco de Mayo, boys. I was shocked to see that there were so many good options available.
Good, but not perfect. And that's, I think, that's the thing to remember. There's everyone that is on the market right now is generally on the market for a reason. Sometimes it's age, sometimes it's recent injury. DeMar Dotson, for example, is still on the market, and we'll get into him surely. And a reason he's on the market is a combination of age and the fact that he doesn't really have the same bend that he used to, and he's not as effective in run blocking and in the screen game as he was. We know he's good in pass pro. But you can find solutions. I mean, just go back to 2015, for example. At a later point than this, Ryan Clady tears his ACL in practice during an OTA. And it doesn't take long before Ryan Harris is on his way down to Dove Valley and being plugged in there. They gave Tyson Bryler the first look, and then Harris was working elsewhere on the line. Then he moved back over. And that's the thing. You can find solutions. Shoot, Evan Mathis back in that same year, the Broncos brought him in August. So there are always guys that can get you through a year that are available. And I don't even think the Broncos need to have a stampede to get somebody aboard right now. I think they can kind of sit back, look at the market.
Oh, well.
And then figure it out.
Yeah, and Mace, you said there's no perfect option for the Broncos at right tackle. And yes, you're right on that. There is no perfect option, but I don't think Juwan James was a perfect option. I mean, we said how you can't count on him for a whole season. You maybe shouldn't have counted on him for this season at all. So I think that the Broncos, in a really tough situation in which they're in, just losing their high-paid right tackle for the entire year, I actually think they could end up better after this whole thing is done. Now it's going to depend on how much they have to pay a guy to come in, if a guy's able to stay healthy. And of course you have those questions with any guy, but there are some really good options out there. And Mace, let's first start internally, because I think that there is one option that is so intriguing internally, and it's not Calvin Anderson who you're talking about. I would love Calvin Anderson to get a shot. Right. I think he deserves it. He's put his time in. But I think the guy that is so intriguing, especially since OTAs haven't started, is Dalton Risner. Guys, why is he not going to be considered? And I know Benjamin Albright is reporting that it's not going to happen. But so mine isn't. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but why not? The Broncos have built this interior depth on the offensive line, haven't touched tackle. Try Dalton out at right tackle, unless Mike Munchak says absolutely no way. For some reason, we don't think he's going to do it. But guys, at Kansas State, his final 3 years, he was a stud. He started every single game at right tackle and was an absolute stud at right tackle.
He was a stud, but at the same time, let's say the Broncos, and I think this is accurate, they regard Dalton Risner as somebody who can be a future Pro Bowler at left guard. So do you want to do something to hinder that progress, to kick him outside and put him in a position that he played in college, but maybe doesn't have the same potential to reach to reach a ceiling as a pro as he would at left guard? And I think that's something to kind of think about for a moment here, because you kind of go back and look, say, in 2014 when the Broncos were scrambling for solutions at right tackle and they end up moving Lou Vasquez out there from guard to tackle. Well, moving somebody who was an all-pro at that point to right tackle to try to solve that problem probably wasn't the wisest decision. Actually, when they look back on it, probably should have just left Orlando Franklin there for that year, because moving him inside was what started this turnstile at right tackle that has been arguably worse than the quarterback carousel post Peyton Manning. So I think maybe before you move Dalton Risner, just kind of think about what that might do to his progress as a guard. Now, like you mentioned, Zach, they do have the interior options. Maybe they don't think those interior options are ready just yet. Quinn Miners probably could use a year of seasoning. And I know we like Netani Muti an awful lot, but maybe they think of him as somebody who maybe needs another year of seasoning. So that thought process may come into play too.
Well, really quick, Mace, just to address your point, which I think is a good point, how I would address that is saying, if Dalton Risner, who came in and had a tremendous rookie season, I think we would all agree with that. If he built on that last year at left guard, then I would be saying, no, you have a Pro Bowl left guard. Do not move him. Or you have a guy who this year is going to take that step to be a Pro Bowl left guard. but he took kind of a step back last year, and not a huge step back. He's not bad by any means, but he did take a step back. So that's why I'm okay, because in the past, I've talked about how don't move something that's good. Okay, well, we saw a little regression. That's why I'm okay with moving it. And we're also sitting here May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo again, boys. We're sitting here May 5th, and there is time to move him. And if it doesn't work out, then move him back. I wouldn't like this if we're talking about it October 12th, midway through the season. I would not like that, but there's time to do it.
Don't you think that regression, though, could be accelerated, though, if you move him to another position? He's trying to kind of get back on his feet as one, and you say, okay, we're going to try him as another, because it seems like if a guy struggles at one position, they try him at another, usually that accelerates the progress downhill rather than helps them get back up.
So this is an interesting scenario, because it's like, okay, why did Dalton Risner struggle last year? Well, he struggled last year because they changed the scheme on him. He came in, he was a great fit for what Rich Scangarello was trying to do. He wasn't as good of a fit for what Pat Shurmur was trying to do. And so the question I have is, okay, do you feel his style is a better fit at left guard or at right tackle for this team? And if the answer is left guard, well, then I think you got to keep him there. But if for whatever reason you say, well, we think that his athleticism and whatnot used out on the outside, it might actually be a better fit for this scheme, while we can slide someone else into that left guard spot who will also be a better fit. They got to have those conversations internally and discuss the way that they want to play. But man, I'm split on this, because he did not play great last year. But if you go from great in one scheme, then they change the scheme on you, then you finally figure it out at that position in that scheme, and then they move you to a whole new position that you haven't played in multiple years, you really could just derail a guy's career all off of unforced, not errors, but you are the ones who's at fault for Dalton Risner, not becoming the guy, and he's almost in a contract year here, so you'd be doing a big disservice to him.
There's another thing in play as well, as what would that be doing for Garrett Bolles over at left tackle? And they even mentioned this when they drafted Dalton Risner 2 years ago. And it was just kind of one of the things that kind of at that time made everybody scratch their heads about Garrett Bolles, was that you're bringing in Dalton Risner to help Garrett Bolles on that side. So even though Risner took a step back in terms of his own play last year, he's still somebody that is helping Garrett Bolles pre-snap especially. And if you take that away, what happens to Garrett Bolles? You end up weakening him by moving Risner to right tackle and plugging a new young guy in there at left guard. And if you're gonna do something to weaken Bolles there, and also Lloyd Cushenberry at center. I mean, one thing about Risner is, I think part of his of the thing is, while he's playing left guard, he's helping the center, he's helping Garrett Bolles on the other side. Is this something where if you move him, you cause a chain reaction of things on that flank of the offensive line?
Well, then, yeah, then if you don't think he's going to be good enough at right tackle and he will derail your offensive line that much, then you don't move him. But what the heck are you doing paying Garrett Bolles $17 million if he has to have Dalton Risner next to him? That, to me, would just be would mean that the Garrett Bolles contract, and hey, Garrett played fantastic last year. He deserved that contract. But if you seriously can't take Dalton Risner away from him, then you shouldn't knowing that information internally, you shouldn't have given him that contract. But there are other options, guys. It doesn't just boil down to Dalton Risner playing outside at right tackle. I know Mace was doing the Calvin Anderson. That's going to be a call all on the Broncos, but I would fully expect them to bring someone else in. And let's say Calvin Anderson takes a huge step up, shocks them, then he could get the start. But I mean, Mace, do you see a scenario where they roll with Calvin Anderson and the undrafted tackle that they just brought in as the swing guy?
I think maybe if they decide, okay, we're just going to wait on this for a little bit, maybe you give Calvin Anderson that first week or two of OTAs when you get back in phase 3 and you actually start going offense versus defense, just to find out. Because if you put him in there and the chemistry is building and he does fine working with the first team, he shows that he's taking the next steps that you need, then maybe you sit and wait, because odds are, as we've seen, all these offensive linemen that we'll get into as we start going through the names of the guys available, some of them are probably still going to be available in July and even into August. And there reaches a point with these veterans where they're actually just kind of waiting for the situation where they can step right in and contribute. I mean, the Broncos brought in DeMar Dotson, for example, last August. So it may feel like there's a rush today, but it only feels that way. There isn't a really good reason for the Broncos to have a stampede to sign somebody right now, not with all these names. I think they can kind of sit back. If they want to, they can sit back and be a little bit patient here. Maybe give Anderson a week or two, find out, hey, maybe he's the answer. And if he is the answer, terrific. And then perhaps the solution beyond that is DeMar Dotson, who you trust, coming in and being a depth guy.
Yeah, there's some options here. Multiple reports today. Dennis Kelly, Bobby Massey going to come in for workouts for the Broncos. Those are names that are going to get people a lot more excited than Calvin Anderson. But, here's the thing, and this has been a vicious cycle for a while now, is when you make moves out of desperation, you have to take flawed players. People are mad now at John Elway for throwing all that money at Juwan James. But what were his options? His options were throw a bunch of money at Juwan James and cross your fingers and hope he's healthy, because he is a good player when he's healthy, or take another one of the guys off the pile, whether that's a Calvin Anderson of that year, or whether it's a Donald Stevenson, or whether it's Menelik Watson, or the Broncos are desperate at the position, and desperation in football roster building almost never works out for you. So, you could go get Dennis Kelly, and for 2 days, everyone's going to say, oh my God, this guy's the savior. Have you seen this tape where he runs this guy over and this, that, and the other thing? Oh, look, he locked up Khalil Mack on this play or whatever, and then he's going to come to Denver and he's going to be a flawed player and people are going to hate him. And the same thing will happen with Bobby Massey or Charles Leno or Mitchell Schwartz. They'll get hurt. This is what happens. You're in a bad position. They've been in a bad position at right tackle for a while. Every time they try to fix it, it goes wrong. And until they draft someone or they get an Aaron Rodgers to come in and make everyone look really good, it's going to keep happening.
Yeah, and my ideal scenario for the Broncos here is Mitchell Schwartz. But Ryan, like you said, it comes with risk. I mean, this guy had back surgery last year, so I don't say Mitchell Schwartz and ignore that he had back surgery last year. But if he's medically cleared and your doctors say that he should be good to go, he has reiterated that he wants to play this year, then I think, man, you could get a true right tackle where you're not moving him positions. He comes in, plays right tackle. Day one started before last year, guys. He was a guy that did not miss games. He was very, very healthy, Pro Bowl player. That's the ideal scenario in my mind, but it does come with risk because we are talking about a guy that had back surgery last year and had to miss the end of the season, was cut by the Chiefs just because they wanted to go in a different direction for him. But man, I love that because he's old. I think he's 31, 32, but it's not like he's 38 years old. I mean, we're not talking about DeMar Dotson age there, but I think for me, that would be ideal. Now, saying that, it plays into what Mace was saying about Calvin Anderson. The Broncos would have to have confidence in Calvin Anderson, knowing that, okay, if Mitchell Schwartz does get hurt, then we're going to have to rely on Calvin Anderson. So if in this plan of mine, you have to at least like Calvin Anderson and what he has.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like they like him, but do they trust him enough? Do they like him as the option who, if he stepped in, might have to play extensively? And that's always the question with these with young guys, especially when they're just developing. You don't have a lot of data. I think, frankly, with Calvin Anderson, we had the one game last year. If last year it provided a normal preseason, we might have a better idea where he is in his development. That's just part of what we lost last year when the preseason was wiped out because of COVID. We referred to it with the Packers with Jordan Love, and if he ends up stepping in at quarterback, if they trade Aaron Rodgers, they would have had a better idea on him if they could have thrown him out there for a few games. And so with Anderson, you've got a really limited sample size. I mean, what we do know is that they have liked him enough to keep him around for nearly 2 years. And usually when you have a guy in your building for that long, kind of like Elijah Wilkinson early in his career, you don't keep a guy around because you don't see something in him. It's just a question of whether that something you see becomes good play. Because for Elijah Wilkinson, for example, while he did fine at guard, when they kicked him out to tackle, especially last year, it was a disaster. And so do you want to go in and put all your chips on that, or do you want to make sure that your rear end is covered no matter what?
So this was the third draft for the Broncos, right, since Mike Munchak has been in the building?
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
And they are really paying the price here for never having invested anything in tackle since you brought in the best offensive line coach in the league. It's mind-boggling. You should have done it in the first year and just said, here's a ball of clay. Go make him into a good tackle. Now, by this time, you'd probably have a very solid tackle. Then last year, this was pre-Garrett Bolles breakout. It was the biggest need on the team. You didn't touch it. Now you're, dealing with the repercussions. This year comes around. You know that Juwan James is unreliable. You don't touch it again. I personally don't like going in after one draft and saying, how did they not address this position? Because things fall, weird things happen. They said after this draft, there was guys that they liked that they got swooped up right before. That's, in a one draft sample, I understand. 3 drafts since you brought in Mike Munchak to have not addressed the position at all is mind-boggling, and you're paying the price.
Unless you believe that Mike Munchak can develop somebody kind of like he did Alejandro Villanueva in Pittsburgh. And I think part of it is they're saying, well, Mike, you're good at developing people. You added Mike Munchak as a coach so you wouldn't have to draft a first-round pick and say, all right, here's your ready-made plug-and-play guy. You drafted Munchak because he develops guys so well that maybe you don't have to bring in an early round guy, that you can give him a raw lump of clay. I think the reason why Calvin Anderson comes up is because that lump of clay has been in Mike Munchak's hands for 2 years now. Where is he? What is he, a finished product, or is it just one of those projects that ends up, like a second grade pottery project where you're not, it's supposed to be a cup, but we're not really sure what it is. It's all misshapen. Okay, thanks, son or daughter. Appreciate it.
I just can't imagine that Mike Munchak is sitting back there saying, nah, I'm good when the draft comes around. Nah, I don't need anything for 3 straight drafts. If you have a great player or a great coach, get him some pieces. I mean, look, the Broncos got a 3rd round pick for Vic Fangio and Baron Browning this year, a very, very talented guy, and they used a day 2 pick on him. They did something for him. I can't believe they haven't done that for Mike Munchak at offensive tackle, at tackle.
Yeah, and Mr. Orange here in the comments says, any other teams have good depth at tackle that need a wide receiver? Hamilton or even Tim Patrick in a late pick next year could get a decent right tackle. No, could not.
No.
And also, no one has good depth at tackle. It is by far the least plentiful position in the NFL. It's why it comes at such a premium. It's why everyone's looking for them all the time. And I don't often like to make references to our Madden League, Zach, but as we're roster building in there, you see it. There is a very slim pool of good offensive linemen, and if you don't invest in it heavily, then you end up with a crappy offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, just to point out how extreme it is, Connor McGovern many years ago in our Madden League got paid like $20 million a year.
Yeah, because you just there's not a lot of good ones, and everyone wants the upgrade. So you'd have to do something like what the Chiefs did, and send a big old package to someone. And the only reason they were willing to trade him is because he said, I'm not coming back around here to play right tackle. I want to go play left tackle somewhere.
Because left tackle is where the money is, even though, as Juwan James showed, right tackles can get paid as well and paid very well. And the other thing that's happening, even though historically we've talked about left tackle being the premium spot, you're facing more and more teams that have 2 quality edges. So even though it's not the blind side for a left-handed for a right-handed quarterback, it's only the blind side for a southpaw. Right tackle is almost as much of a premium position as left tackle historically has been. And we see, for example, the Broncos, the way they've used Von Miller over the years, trying to exploit that kind of perceived weakness that the right tackle is less than the left tackle. And so now you're basically thinking, all right, we've got to find 2 premium guys to protect the flanks against these 2 top edge rushers that we're seeing from a lot of teams week after week after week. And there just isn't enough guys out there right now that can do that at a high level. I'm not sure there's ever going to be enough guys out there that can do it at a high level, at least the way that college football is struggling to produce tackles. It's not struggling to produce wide receivers, not struggling to produce some running backs and guys at other positions, but tackle seems to be a trouble spot, and it's not going away.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going away. And when I said Mitchell Schwartz, some people in the comment section said, no, not another injury guy. And I totally get that. So if you don't want to go the injury route, guys, you can go Charles Leno, who played all 16 games last year with the Bears. You can go with Dennis Kelly, who played all 16 games for the Titans last year. Now, he has had some injury concerns in the past, but not last year. You'd be hoping like the Ronald Darby route, where last year was the way he's trending right now. And the Broncos are bringing in Dennis Kelly. And like Mace said, the Broncos may not make a decision and come to a settlement with Juwan James for a long time. They also don't seem to be in any rush to bring in one of these tackles and get them signed right now. And the good thing is they don't really need to be, because OTAs and when actual practices start isn't for another 2 weeks still. So the Broncos have time on that front. And if they're bringing someone in from the outside, it's going to be a vet that's very, very experienced and doesn't truly need OTAs, probably doesn't want OTAs either.
And that we saw that last year. I remember Jason Peters kind of lingered out there, and even DeMar Dotson lingered into August. So again, you can kind of afford to be patient. It may feel like the sky is falling today, but the truth is, you can you can look at several tackles. You can bring them in, give them a physical, assess what kind of shape they're in. I mean, maybe, pardon my phone going off there. Maybe
ESPN news.
Yeah, it's actually nothing football related. It's a notification about NHL power rankings, which I'm sure would be great on the Avs podcast, but I digress. But you sit back and find out, is this guy in shape? I mean, that's actually kind of a big thing. And our guy we all know, Tyler Columbus, he's somebody who actually lost a lot of weight right after he ended things with the Broncos in Super Bowl 50. And I remember him telling me when we were working over on the same radio station a few years ago that, hey, like a couple months later, he had teams that wanted him back, but he was already too far down the road of post-career weight loss to put it back on and come play for somebody. But that also tells you a lot. Tyler Columbus that year was kind of a swing guy. He was backing up, just kind of playing as needed, and had been cut by the Falcons earlier that season, and yet there were teams that wanted to bring him in. It tells you about the scarcity of tackles right now, the scarcity of good tackles in this league, that there's a scramble to try to bring people in. So that being said, there's always a few guys that sort of linger. Again, they linger because of injuries, they linger because of health. You accept that. Like Charles Leno Jr., for example, is somebody the Bears just cut, and I know his name popped up on a lot of radars. The only thing with Leno is he's been a left tackle. Do you want to train somebody today to be a right tackle if they've been a left tackle their entire career?
I couldn't hear what you said.
Siri, please.
Phone is blowing up, Mace. Yeah, and that's why there is no perfect option. Like you said, Mace, there is no perfect option. But in the end, and I really don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but in the end, this situation for this year could play out where maybe the Broncos actually end up saving some money in the grand scheme of things, or they have a guy that comes in and plays 16 games for them. It's so unfortunate what happened to Juwan James, and would never wish that on him. But at least it happened in May, when the Broncos can have some time to find out a replacement, instead of, right before the season, when these guys all may be off the market.
So, Zach, you said your ideal scenario is Mitchell Schwartz. Mace, what is your ideal scenario?
I would love Mitchell Schwartz if you can bring him in, even though you are concerned about the back. You're not concerned about the play. I mean, Schwartz, you bring him in. Frankly, if he's healthy, you've found somebody who is at least as good as you were expecting from Juwan James, if not better. Behind Schwartz for me is the guy that and maybe this is just, you keep DeMar Dotson kind of in the back pocket, and as long as he's unsigned, he's somebody that you have on speed dial. He can fit in. His limitations, and you can work around his limitations. The fact that his limitations involve the screen game and the run game, and his strength at this point involve pass pro, still means he's a plus player for you, because with all respect to what you do in the run game, pass pro is more important in this day and age. And that's something that he can do very well. And he did last year with a minimum amount of mistakes. And you didn't see him getting called for penalties, for example, on a regular basis. So as long as you've got DeMar Dotson as someone that you can pick up the phone and call, you have somebody that you trust.
Yeah.
Ryan,
absolutely.
What is your ideal scenario?
I like Charles Leno, especially because I believe he's made 93 consecutive starts on the line. Of all the things that you don't want to deal with, again, it's another injury. I'll touch wood on his behalf and anyone else who could be coming in, but it'd just be so great to have someone that you can at least believe you can rely on. Football's an unpredictable sport. People get hurt every game, all the time, but you want to bring in a guy who is healthy, and has been healthy. And so for me, that works out pretty darn well. And you still can, work with a guy like Calvin Anderson, see if he can, create an opportunity for himself on that line. And then the next one for me would be Dalton Reisner. I think the fact that he was not as good last year at left guard kind of opens up a window for you to say, okay, well, let's put you in a position that you've succeeded before. And hey, if you can pull this off, your value is going to go up dramatically.
Yeah, there would be plenty of reason for Dalton Reisner to move out there, especially in what could end up being kind of a contract year for him. That would make a lot of sense. And the Broncos right now, we know they're scheduled to visit with Dennis Kelly next week, who is a guy that played 16 games last year. And they're also scheduled with Bobby Massey, who has the injury background. So they're testing out both styles, and we'll see which way they go. But I just hope, just like Ryan said, I hope that they at least think of Dalton Reisner and think about what they could do, because let's say they keep Dalton at left guard and even he plays a little better this year. Well, then you still have two really good backup guards potentially. Those guys don't help your team when they're just sitting on the bench. You've put yourself in this situation where you have potentially a big luxury at guard, and you need a lot of help at tackle. If one of those guys can play tackle, you might as well try it. And if it doesn't work out, because it's May right now, you can go back and put Dalton back at left guard.
How much are you guys willing to pay? And that's, I think, also a consideration here, especially when you have the Aaron Rodgers thing lingering. And if you do, a lot of that cap space you're going to have to kind of manipulate a little bit. The Broncos last year in the end sum paid DeMar Dotson $2.734 million, just a little bit above that total. Is that a number that you're thinking would be appropriate for who you'd bring in?
Oh my gosh. I mean, if you can get any of these guys we've talked about for $2.7 million, you do it in a heartbeat. But I'm okay with not going the cheap route. I'm not basing this decision on money. So obviously you're not going to go sign one of these guys for $17 million. But if you're going to get some substantial savings from Juwan James, I'm okay with using that money and all of that money. And in fact, you do have to leave some room for Aaron Rodgers, because he's going to cost you a lot more than what your quarterback situation currently is. But I'd be willing to spend a lot more than just $2 million on the right tackle position.
You got to do what you got to do. You just freed up a bunch of money. It'll be interesting to see if you actually get that. There's some reporting out there that maybe it would stay on your cap until the grievance was settled. But either way, you can kind of expect that you're going to have some money freed up here. And the Broncos are in fine cap shape. So pick a guy that you like the best and pay him what you got to pay him to get him out there.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And guys, before we get out of here, got to get our DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the weekend. And I'll go first, guys. I can't ignore all of the Aaron Rodgers news and what's happening around that situation. So I tried to find what I thought was the best bet surrounding this on DraftKings Sportsbook. And I think I found a good one, but I want your guys' opinion. So my DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week is I'm taking, and I don't love it, but I like it. I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings to win their division at plus 250. Right now, the Green Bay Packers are at minus 115. I imagine that has come back closer to even since all of this broke. But the fact that they're still favorites means that they're still counting on Aaron Rodgers to be there. And the next team that has the best odds is Minnesota at plus 250. I don't see the Bears, even with Justin Fields, but just as a rookie, I don't see them winning it. And the Lions, I mean, it seems like they're a couple of years out. So I like Minnesota right now when you can get the juice at plus 250 because, guys, I think when Aaron Rodgers is traded, that is going to they're going to be the heavy favorites.
I like how you're saying when Aaron Rodgers is traded, because the interesting thing, I think, if we're making it a when, do the Broncos become a great play to win the division at 5-1?
Yeah, very well could. Another one that I liked, but I just didn't go there today. Maybe next week was the Broncos over under at 9. You're getting plus money on the over. If so, I mean, if they get Aaron Rodgers, they're absolutely hitting that. I like that one as well.
Yeah, I'm going to take the obvious one here. Aaron Rodgers to the Broncos is, and this is in the Aaron Rodgers specials under free agency specials. First team for player to play one snap for in the 2021 season. The Broncos are still 7-4, and of course, this accounts for the notion that the Packers would hold on to Aaron Rodgers. So the Packers are sitting at 3-4 right now. They had 4-6 odds before. Now it's 3-4. The Broncos, they're the favorites in this, but 7-4 is still a perfectly fine number. You don't go broke making a profit. I'm going to take the Broncos at 7-4 to land Aaron Rodgers.
I like it. I like the pick. And there's a comment in here: no talk about the Broncos potentially tampering with Aaron Rodgers. My only talk about it is good luck proving it.
Exactly.
All right.
Is it possible that, and this is referring to both the Broncos and 49ers, is it possible that there were intermediaries involved that basically would allow both the Broncos and 49ers plausible deniability? Absolutely. Tampering is one of those things, like you mentioned. Good luck proving it. It's relatively impossible to prove. So, no, I think it's interesting, but I think it's a non-story.
Yep. Yeah. Again, you're not going to prove it. You can
like
whine and moan about it all you want.
Yeah.
It's really true. Really quick, I like this one from Tickle Pickle. It says bet $100 on Aaron Rodgers to go to the Raiders. So if he goes there, at least you get $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, emotional hedging is a real thing. All right, my DraftKings pick of the week, going back to a favorite well of mine, Michael Porter Jr. over 2.5 threes tonight against the New York Knicks. Yeah, it's easy money in my opinion. So he had it last game, and then the refs stole it away from him. But that's a thing of the past. I'm gonna let that go.
Well, I love that one, Ryan, and it seems like all the Colorado ones you do certainly hit. And guys, you can get in on all of these over at DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. And for this weekend's fight, if you don't want to have to wait on Aaron Rodgers' decision, you can get in on some action that'll give you 55-1 odds. All you have to do is pick one fighter from the main event to win. And if they win, you'll turn $1 into $55 this weekend. And of course, you can also get in on all of the upcoming playoff action with hockey, basketball. And one thing that I absolutely love at DraftKings Sportsbook, which you don't find anywhere else, is all of their daily odds boosts. So the line Ryan mentioned, you may be able to get that at a much better price with the daily odds boost. And that's what I love. It's like a Christmas present every day over there at DraftKings, where you're saying, okay, this one I may win, $10 if I bet $10. Oh, and they say, why don't we just make it so you win $25? That's what they do with their daily odds boost over at DraftKings Sportsbook. So head to the App Store now, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and use code DNVR when you sign up. For a limited time, all new users bet $1 to win $55 on this weekend's main event. That's all you have to do. They're going all out for new users by offering them a chance to win $55 and placing a $1 bet on this weekend's fight. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
All right, guys, that is going to wrap us up on the live side of things today. We're jumping over to the podcasting. We'll answer all the questions from members of DNVR. So if you want to get your questions in and answered every single day, you can become a member at DNVR and leave your questions on the previous day's podcast. We'll get to them. But we appreciate all you guys watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out, and we'll catch you guys later.